Emily Thompson quietly climbed the worn stairs of her suburban Boston home. The 80-year-old Victorian mansion was her life itself. As she touched the familiar wooden banister she'd known since childhood, it was as if she could feel her parents' warmth. This 4,000-square-foot house meant more to her than just a building. Smoothing her soft brown hair, Emily wore her usual understated navy suit. As a senior accountant at a large accounting firm earning $85,000 a year, her preference for modest attire hadn't changed since her college days. Even at 32, memories in this house remained vivid. The sunset streaming through the stained glass windows always reminded her of her mother's gentle smile. In the spacious garden, roses she had planted with her father still bloomed proudly. Spending holidays tending to the garden and cooking family recipes learned from her mother were her greatest pleasures. "I'm home." Cold air greeted her as she opened the front door. After long hours at the major accounting firm, she returned home at 6 p.m. Her once warm family home now showed a different face. The annual property tax of $20,000, previously shared by the family, now rested solely on her shoulders. "Oh, Emily. Working late again?" Her mother-in-law Patricia peered out from the sitting room, elegantly dressed. Her perfect makeup and expensive jewelry gleamed. A former private school teacher, she now devoted herself to bridge club twice a week and social activities. Since losing her husband 10 years ago, she had been living comfortably on generous insurance money. Her gaze always held a subtle distaste for Emily. "Welcome back." Her sister-in-law Rachel's voice echoed from the second floor. She called herself a beauty influencer with 20,000 social media followers, but in reality, she was unemployed. Her lavish monthly expenses of $5,000 were entirely covered by monthly allowances of $3,000 from her brother Michael. Her credit card debt had already exceeded $30,000. Emily silently headed to the kitchen. Married for 3 years without children, the past 6 months of living with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law had completely changed the atmosphere of the house. Her husband Michael, a successful architect running his own design firm and earning over $150,000 annually, had recently become increasingly interested in real estate development and was coming home later and later. Known as a stylish businessman, her husband loved expensive watches and maintained a superficially gentlemanly demeanor. However, lately, his attitude toward his wife had grown increasingly cold, while his excessive doting on his sister was obvious to everyone around them. While preparing dinner, Emily checked her mobile phone. There was a message from her real brother James. A partner at a major Boston law firm, her brother was also co-executor of their parents' will. Known as a sharp lawyer earning over $300,000 annually, he was also an expert in real estate law. "How are you? I'll call this weekend." The brief message warmed her heart a little. Her intelligent and reliable brother had been calling without fail every week since their parents passed away in a car accident 2 years ago. His kindness toward his sister showed even in these calls squeezed between his busy work schedule. From the kitchen window, she could see the rose garden. This house, worth $2 million on the market, was an iconic presence in the upscale neighborhood. However, recently, a wave of redevelopment had been sweeping through the neighborhood, with old mansions disappearing one after another, replaced by newly built condominiums. Property values were rising dramatically, attracting developers' attention. After finishing dinner preparations, Emily sat alone at the dining table. Her mother-in-law and sister-in-law said they would eat in their rooms. A message from Michael indicated he would be late again tonight. The dining table, once filled with family smiles, now belonged to her alone. The next day, she would again quietly handle household chores alone and head to work at 7:30 a.m. Even on holidays, her days were consumed by housework. How long would this routine continue? Though known for her mild temperament and patience, lately, a quiet anxiety had begun to grow in her heart. Outside the window, the evening breeze gently swayed the rose petals. Her parents' promise, "Protect this house," still echoed quietly in her heart tonight. It was both their will and a pledge with her brother. However, recently, keeping that promise seemed to be becoming increasingly difficult. At 8 a.m. on a holiday morning, Emily was already in the kitchen. Today was her mother-in-law Patricia's birthday. To prepare a meal worthy of this special day, she had carefully selected the finest ingredients from the market the day before. Changed into an elegant new navy dress, Emily efficiently worked in the large kitchen. In the dining room, illuminated by crystal chandeliers, fresh flower centerpieces were already arranged, and antique dishes were beautifully set out. Mother-in-law's favorite roast beef turned out perfectly. Emily nodded with satisfaction as she checked by herself. She had carefully chosen the menu considering her mother-in-law's preferences. The appetizer was lobster bisque, followed by Wagyu roast beef, grilled seasonal vegetables, and a special order birthday cake. She had prepared an expensive Bordeaux wine. I'm hungry. Near noon, Rachel appeared in the kitchen. Dressed in the latest fashion with perfect makeup, she took a drink from the refrigerator and said, "But I'm meeting friends for tea later, so I'll just have something light." Emily said nothing in response. She was already used to their indifferent attitude toward the meals she had spent an entire day preparing. Well, aren't you quite the cook?" Patricia came to check on things, giving a condescending look as she said, "But is the seasoning right? Do you know my preferences?" Emily just smiled silently. Despite having asked about and studied her mother-in-law's preferences countless times. At 6 p.m., the party began. Under the crystal chandelier, silver cutlery gleamed on the antique table. Michael came directly from work, Patricia was dressed up in a new dress, and Rachel arrived after shopping with friends as the family gathered one by one. And then that moment arrived. Oh. The chairs. Emily looked around the table and felt something was off. 6 chairs. 7 place settings. What? There are enough seats for everyone, right? Rachel said with a malicious smile. Her eyes didn't even try to hide their obvious hostility. Oh, Emily, why don't you eat in the kitchen? You must be busy, right? Patricia said with an elegant smile. Her voice dripped with cruel triumph. Michael sat down silently. His expensive watch coldly reflected the chandelier's light. The room's atmosphere froze. Relatives wore confused expressions, Rachel looked satisfied, Patricia maintained her artificial smile, and her husband maintained an attitude of indifference as if it were someone else's problem. Emily slowly straightened her back. Known for her mild temperament, at this moment, her eyes held a strong will. It seems I'm not considered family. Please excuse me. Emily spoke quietly but firmly. There was a strange strength in her voice. Back in her room, Emily immediately picked up her mobile phone. She briefly explained the situation to her brother James, including everything that had happened up until now. "This might be my limit. I understand. I'm coming right now. Wait for me." Her brother's voice mixed anger with his usual calmness. The party continued as usual. Family members chatting, a celebratory mood, birthday cake preparations. No one imagined that this glamorous gathering would soon be greatly shaken. And an hour and a half later, the doorbell rang. When James appeared, the party venue fell silent. In his hand, dressed in an expensive suit, he held what appeared to be a heavy briefcase full of documents. The crystal chandelier's light coldly illuminated the documents in James's hands. Known as a lawyer, his expression lacked its usual calmness. From the moment he learned of his sister's betrayal, his eyes had harbored flames of anger. His experience handling numerous real estate lawsuits as a partner at a downtown law firm was about to be put to use protecting his sister. Documents were spread one after another across the antique table. Confidential agreements with real estate development companies, printed emails, bank transaction records, and detailed architectural plans. They all clearly told the story of this family's betrayal. The mountain of documents cast shadows on the table like accumulated lies. First, this is a copy of the contract signed last month. James pulled out one document. The contract date was 1 month ago. The contract amount was $500,000. The planned construction was for a 20-unit luxury condominium. The planned selling price for each unit was $1.5 million. The total projected sales would reach $300 million in this large-scale project. The secret agreement with the developers also promised priority orders for Michael's design firm, revealing the full scope of the backdoor dealings. And this is the record of the contract payment already made. $500,000 has already been transferred from the developer to Michael's personal account. The bank statement cast a dull light on the table. The transaction date, sender's name, and amount were highlighted in red marker. "Wait, I can explain, this was for operating funds for the office." Michael's voice trembled. His hand with the expensive watch also shook slightly. His usual confident demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and his face turned ashen. Well, this was all done thinking of the family, for a new life suited to modern times. Patricia tried to smooth things over, but her voice had already lost its strength. Her new dress now only highlighted her anxiety. Her ringed fingers trembled slightly, and her true age began to show through her perfect makeup. "Big brother, what about the promised new apartment?" "My share? You promised me the corner unit on the 5th floor." Rachel cried out in a panic. Her voice contained not a trace of her previous arrogance. Her hands trembling as they gripped her smartphone, her latest brand name bag tumbled to the floor. "Rachel, be quiet." Michael tried to stop his sister, but it was already too late. The details of the secret agreement were being revealed one after another. The promise of the top floor of the new building to his sister's family, the promise of $200,000 monthly living expenses to Patricia, and the fact that everything had been advanced while hiding it from Emily was all exposed to the light of day. The secret agreement with the developers, the family profit distribution plan, and the circumstances of Emily's exclusion. Everything is clear. Furthermore, it has been discovered that this plan had been in preparation for more than 6 months. James's voice grew even more severe. He placed a new stack of documents on the desk. Email histories, meeting minutes, bank account opening records. The evidence was perfectly assembled. However, you all made a critical oversight. He pulled out a new document. Their parents' will. This solemn document had already been certified by the court. This will contain special provisions. It's as if our parents had foreseen this kind of situation. At that moment, tears glistened in Emily's eyes. Her parents' final love was trying to protect her. First, there's a clause requiring Emily's consent. This means that any sale or renovation cannot be executed without Emily's written consent. Second, there's a sale restriction clause. This stipulates that the property cannot be sold for 20 years without special circumstances. Third, there are penalty provisions for violations. These include the possibility of criminal charges in addition to civil damages. And fourth, there's a requirement for joint management between siblings. Any important decisions regarding this house require agreement between Emily and myself. James slowly read out each clause. Each word changed the color of the faces of those who had plotted against them. The document, filled with legal terminology, completely shattered their schemes. These provisions have full legal binding power under real estate law. In case of violation, they could be subject to criminal charges. Particularly regarding the contract money already received, I judge there is an extremely high possibility it meets the constituent requirements for fraud. Surely not. You intend to press charges? My position in society. Patricia's expression changed dramatically. The blood drained from the face of the woman who prided herself as a flower of society. Her elegant afternoons at twice-weekly bridge club would now come to an end. Emily, can't we resolve this through discussion? We're husband and wife, aren't we? Michael pleaded toward his wife. However, his eyes were fixed not on his wife, but on his own uncertain future. It was clear his reputation as an architect would be ruined by this incident. It's too late. Emily's voice was surprisingly calm. Her attachment to the house inherited from her parents, and all her dedicated efforts until now. These gave her strength. Though known for her mild temperament and patience, her expression now held strong determination. Preparations for the lawsuit are already complete. The defendants will be Michael Thompson, Patricia Thompson, Rachel Thompson, and the development company. James continued. On the desk lay the complaint that had already been prepared. We are also considering reporting this to the police. Particularly regarding the flow of the contract money, investigating authorities will show strong interest, including suspicions of money laundering. Asset preservation procedures have already begun. The room's atmosphere grew even heavier. The decorations for the birthday party now took on an ironic tone. And finally, my last warning. James stood up. His presence was exactly that of a formidable lawyer. Every word from him, earning over $300,000 annually, carried weight. If there are any further illegal acts, we will take immediate legal action. Please vacate this house within 24 hours. Your belongings will be sorted later under my supervision. Those words were the final blow. Patricia collapsed into her chair, Rachel broke down crying, and Michael just stood there dumbfounded. This is how the glamorous birthday party came to an end. On the table, the untouched dishes remained. The Wagyu roast beef, lobster bisque, and grilled seasonal vegetables that Emily had prepared with such care. And the special order birthday cake sat quietly maintaining its splendor, never having been cut. The expensive Bordeaux wine grew cold on the table, its cork never opened. Emily stood by the window, gazing at the rose garden. She had managed to protect this precious place left by her parents. The evening breeze gently caressed her cheek. It was as if her parents were encouraging her. Her reflection in the window glass looked a little stronger than before. This might be the beginning of a new life. The moment she thought this, a small light of hope lit up in her heart. In a conference room at a top Boston law firm, Emily sat across from James. The morning sun streaming through the large windows illuminated the divorce papers spread on the desk. 2 weeks after the revelation, her life had begun to move in a big direction. This is the final proposal for property division. Emily's voice had become stronger than before. While her mild temperament hadn't changed, she now had a solid core of strength. The documents on the desk detailed a comprehensive list of assets. Michael's betrayal seems to have run deeper than we imagined. James pulled out a new stack of documents. They contained evidence of Michael's past fraudulent transactions. Padded billing on development projects, under-the-table deals with clients, and even suspected tax evasion. Behind his brilliant career as an architect, he had committed numerous illegal acts. We've confirmed it. Just in the past 3 years alone, we've found 5 fraudulent cases. Anger seeped into James's voice. Evidence appeared one after another on the computer on the desk. Complaint emails from clients, suspicious deposit records, falsified design drawings. Everything told the true nature of Michael. Meanwhile, the neighborhood had changed significantly. This incident had become the biggest topic in the upscale residential area. Patricia's position in society had changed completely, and she naturally stopped attending the twice-weekly bridge club. The elegant afternoons of the past would never return. New facts about Patricia's past have also come to light. James continued his explanation while operating a tablet. The screen displayed a newspaper article from 10 years ago. An article about suspicions surrounding Patricia's inheritance from her previous husband. Suspicious insurance payments, conflicts with other family members, and numerous financial troubles. This incident was certainly not her first case. Mother-in-law was always this kind of person. Emily's voice carried resignation rather than sadness. The elegant life in a luxury apartment, the brilliant reputation in society, perhaps it had all been for show. The impact had reached Michael's architectural firm as well. Major clients canceled one after another, and new projects drastically decreased. Employees continued to resign, and the office fell into a difficult state to maintain. His expensive watch was pawned, and his stylish suits grew increasingly shabby. Brother, about Rachel too. The materials Emily handed over contained surprising content. False advertising on social media, selling counterfeit brand items, and multiple credit card frauds. The glamorous life she broadcast to her 20,000 followers was all built on lies. The total debt far exceeds our initial estimates. James continued his explanation matter-of-factly. Rachel's debts had already exceeded $1 million. Exceeding credit card limits, borrowing from loan sharks, and compensation money from fraudulent product sales. Bankruptcy was unavoidable. Local media widely reported this incident. Family collapse of prominent architect, real estate fraud shakes upscale neighborhood. The spread on social media was instantaneous, becoming a major topic in the architectural industry. Criticism from developers poured in, and Michael's work opportunities completely disappeared. The court has also issued an asset preservation order. James pulled out a new official document. Michael and his group's assets were frozen, and their travel abroad was restricted. One heavy document announcing the end of their glamorous lifestyle. Meanwhile, different developments had begun at Emily's family home. The 80-year-old Victorian mansion had found new value. Procedures for historical building designation were progressing, and its evaluation as a neighborhood landmark was rising. It's becoming a model case for house preservation efforts. James reported happily. Support from local residents was strong, and it was drawing interest from younger generations. The precious place inherited from their parents was gaining new brilliance in a different form. There's one more thing to report. James pulled out the final document. A restraining order against Michael and the others. This would prevent them from approaching Emily or the house. It was an important step marking the beginning of a new life. Quiet tears glistened in Emily's eyes. However, these weren't signs of weakness. They were proof of her determination and strength for her new life. Outside the window, Boston streets were full of vitality. Emily stood up and took a deep breath. In her expression illuminated by the morning sun, there was no more hesitation. She would forge ahead with her life using her own strength. That determination shone strongly in her eyes. Before leaving the conference room, Emily picked up a photograph from the desk. An old family photo with her parents. She nodded slightly at her parents' gently smiling faces. What true family bonds mean? She had already found that answer. 1 year later. Spring sunlight streamed into the old Victorian house in suburban Boston. Emily was quietly reflecting on the past days while tending to the roses in the garden. This year, there seemed to be more blooms than last year. She smiled while touching the rose buds. The rose garden inherited from her parents had now become known as a local attraction. It wasn't uncommon for neighborhood children to visit for tours on holidays. Emily, coffee's ready. A voice called from the kitchen. It was her new friend Sarah. They had met through the local Historical Building Preservation Society, and now she often visited the house on weekends. Thank you. I'll be right there. Emily removed her gardening gloves and brushed off the soil. In one corner of the garden stood a newly installed bench. She had suggested placing it there to serve as a community garden feature. The atmosphere of this house is really wonderful, Sarah said while offering coffee. Homemade lemon cake was also placed on the antique table on the terrace. Emily had been gradually reviving her mother's cherished recipes. Hey, how's that book idea coming along? At Sarah's question, Emily smiled somewhat shyly. She had recently begun writing a book about preserving and revitalizing historical houses. It's progressing, little by little. I want many people to understand the value of old houses. Her words carried a sense of certainty. Work was going well too. She had been promoted to department head at the accounting firm, with a significant salary increase. More than anything, her attitude toward work had changed. Her previously reserved demeanor had faded, replaced by confidence in making proposals. Her mobile phone rang, displaying her brother's name. "Emily, do you have time this afternoon?" James's voice was filled with his usual kindness. The sibling bond had deepened even further over this year. They made sure to have a family dinner at least once a month, cherishing the time to share their lives with each other. "Yes, of course. I have tea prepared today too." After hanging up, Emily looked up at the sky. Spring clouds were drifting quietly. Meanwhile, the former family members were each walking their own paths. Michael had his architect's license temporarily suspended and was working as a design assistant in a small town. Having lost his expensive suits and watches, he was living a modest life. All his former glamorous connections had been lost. Patricia had been completely expelled from society and had developed depression. She had given up her luxury apartment and was living quietly in a suburban nursing home. The weekend bridge club and elegant tea parties would never return. Rachel had gone through bankruptcy proceedings and was working as a clerk at an apparel store in a provincial city. Her social media accounts were deleted, her 20,000 followers gone. The luxurious life had vanished like a dream, and her days were spent pursuing debt repayment. "But they're all still alive," Emily whispered quietly. She no longer felt hatred or anger. She had learned firsthand that life always brings consequences. The house renovations were steadily progressing too. Modern facilities were being carefully installed while preserving the historical value. The old wooden stairs were meticulously repaired, and the stained glass was restored by specialists. The house was breathing new life, gaining renewed brilliance. "In about an hour, the children will be coming for their tour," Sarah said while looking at the clock. Recently, the house had been chosen as a field trip destination for local elementary schools. A new role had emerged, teaching children the importance of history. Thanks to Emily, this neighborhood has changed too. Indeed, changes were visible in the streetscape. Uncontrolled redevelopment had subsided, and town planning that utilized old buildings was being promoted. Emily's house had become a symbol of this movement. "Perhaps what changed was myself," Emily answered quietly. While her mild and modest personality remained unchanged, she had acquired inner strength. The experience of successfully protecting the house inherited from her parents had given her great confidence. At twilight, Emily spoke to her parents' photograph. "I'm happy, Mom and Dad. In this house, I found a new form of family." Her parents in the photograph smiled gently. Outside the window, the spring breeze quietly swayed the rose petals. Tomorrow too, warm sunlight would stream into this house. Emily stood by the window, watching the setting sun. This might be true happiness. Though the form of family may change, what's truly important always remains in the heart. Gratitude to her parents who helped her realize this, and hope for her new life quietly filled her heart.